So I want you to just imagine for a second that you've discovered time travel,
Okay, I'm picturing it.
right? But try to erase that image of a sterile laboratory filled with, glowing machines and frantic scientists in lab coats.
Oh, so no massive particle accelerators or anything?
Exactly. I mean, imagine the discovery doesn't happen in a lab at all. Instead, it happens on a quiet, dusty farm in Wisconsin.
That is definitely a different vibe.
Yeah, and the catalyst, the very first proof that time travel actually exists, is just your dog trotting up onto the porch and dropping a freshly chewed dinosaur bone right at your feet.
Just a casual message from the Jurassic period via a golden retriever.
Right. Welcome to our latest deep dive. Today we are unpacking a massive stack of material. We're talking literary critiques, 1970s historical context, thematic essays, and of course the text itself.
We've got a lot of ground to cover.
We really do. We are jumping headfirst into Clifford D. Simak's deeply weird and honestly incredibly brilliant 1978 novel called Macedonia.
Which was actually an expansion of a short story he wrote way back in 1955, right? Project Mastodon.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing you have to keep in mind here is that this book predates Michael Crichton's Jurassic Park by decades.
Decades. It's wild to think about.
But, it completely flips the script on what you'd expect. It uses the ultimate sci-fi trope of time travel, but not for some high-octane action thriller.
No, it's much more subtle than that.
It is. Our mission today is to explore how this story functions as a pastoral satire.
Yeah.
We're going to look at what happens when the ultimate scientific breakthrough inevitably just smashes head-on into, well, human greed.
An aggressive modern bureaucracy.
Yes. The IRS gets involved, which is amazing, and ultimately it's a story about the tragic loss of the quiet life.
It really is a remarkable collision of concepts. I mean, to truly ground why Macedonia operates this way, why we are sitting here talking about dinosaurs and the Internal Revenue Service in the exact same breath, we really have to look at their architect himself.
Yeah, we need to talk about Simak.
Right. Clifford D. Simak is an absolute titan in the genre, but his footprint, his legacy is just completely unique.
I mean, the man was highly respected.
Oh, absolutely. In 1977, right as this novel was going to the printers, he was actually awarded the title of Grand Master by the Science Fiction and Fantasy Writers of America.
Which is a huge deal.
It's the highest honor, but he earned that title using a toolkit that was almost entirely antithetical to what his contemporaries were doing at the time.
Right, because the phrase that always comes up in the literary analysis, the thing everyone calls him, is the pastoralist of science fiction.
Yes, the pastoralist.
I really want to dig into that because, when you look at the landscape of 1970s sci-fi, it is completely dominated by these massive, sprawling space operas.
Oh, yeah, it was the era of the Galactic Empire.
Exactly. I mean, you have the explosion of Star Wars in the theaters. You have the continued cultural dominance of Star Trek on TV.
Everyone is writing about laser battles and artificial intelligence and warp drives.
Yeah. But Simak, he is not doing any of that. He just completely ignores the galactic core.
He stays grounded.
Super grounded. His focus is relentlessly rural. It's specifically tied to the landscapes of his native Wisconsin. He writes about these incredibly ordinary everyday people.
Farmers, journalists, folks living in small towns.
Right. And the tone of his work, it's very quiet. It's contemplative.
That's a great word for it.
I was trying to think of an analogy for this, and it's like, if you think about standard Golden Age science fiction as this shiny high-speed bullet train just hurtling into the future, right?
Yeah, the sheer velocity just blurring the scenery outside the window.
Exactly. But Simak's work is fundamentally different. It's not just that he's driving a slower train. It's like sitting on a creaky wooden porch swing.
Oh, I like that.
Thanks. The stationary nature of it is the whole point. Because you aren't moving so fast, it allows you to really tune your observation to the human frequency rather than just the technological one.
Right. It lets you see the emotional landscape in much sharper detail.
Yeah.
And, what's fascinating here is how Simak uses that exact nostalgic, bucolic American landscape as a grounding mechanism.
A grounding mechanism for the weird stuff.
Right. For concepts that would otherwise completely break a reader's suspension of disbelief.
Because he goes to some weird places.
He really does. He will take first contact with an immortal alien species or advanced temporal physics, and he just drops them right into the middle of a sleepy farming community.
A place where the biggest news of the week is usually just the local weather report.
Exactly. And by doing that, He fundamentally changes the questions the narrative is actually asking.
How so?
Well, he isn't asking you to care about the schematics of a warp drive. He doesn't care about the math. He is asking how the ordinary human heart reacts when the impossible suddenly just, manifests in the backyard.
Which brings us perfectly to the inciting incident of Macedonia, that exact moment where the impossible invades the mundane.
The dog with the bone.
Yes, part 1 of the book. It begins by introducing us to our main character, Asa Steele.
Asa is a great protagonist.
He is. He's a university paleontologist, and currently he's just on a sabbatical. He's retreating to this very quiet, isolated farm in rural Wisconsin.
Just trying to get some peace and quiet.
Yeah, and he has a dog named Bowser, and it's all very idyllic. But then Bowser starts coming back from his little daily excursions into the woods with some highly unusual souvenirs.
To put it mildly.
Right. So first, the dog brings back a completely pristine flint spearhead.
Which is weird enough on its own.
Definitely. Asa looks at it and notes that it absolutely defies any known 20th century origin. It's too perfect. But the real shock comes a few days later.
This is the crazy part.
Yeah, Bowser trots at the porch steps, tail wagging, and just drops a dinosaur bone at Asa's feet.
And Asa is a literal paleontologist.
Exactly. He spends his entire life dusting off petrified fossils. He knows exactly what old bones look like. But he picks this bone up, and he realizes it isn't petrified stone.
It's real.
It is fresh. It is heavy. The text notes that it actually still contains fresh marrow inside of it.
That physical detail is just so striking. The fresh marrow, the smell of fresh blood on something that should be, 60 million years old.
It's mind-bending.
It really is the mechanism that shatters Asa's reality. Simak is establishing a concept here that literary analysts often refer to as the living past.
The living past. What does that mean exactly in this context?
Well, in standard time travel narratives, the past is usually treated almost like a museum you visit, right? You walk through, look at the exhibits, try not to touch anything.
Like the butterfly effect trope. Don't
Yeah.
step on a bug or the future changes.
Exactly. But Simak makes it visceral. It's bleeding. It's contiguous with our present reality. It's not a graveyard you observe from a distance. It's a parallel breathing ecosystem that's located just on the other side of a conceptual tree line.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because this choice of how the discovery happens just feels so incredibly deliberate on Simak's part.
Well, it's totally deliberate.
I mean, if you are a science fiction grandmaster, you have the skill to engineer any opening you want. Why bypass the classic trope?
That's the big question.
Right. We don't get a brilliant physicist standing at a chalkboard having a massive eureka moment. We don't get a multi-billion-dollar particle accelerator tearing a literal hole in space-time.
No flashing lights or klaxons.
None of that. We get Bowser the dog playing fetch in the dirt. Why give the greatest discovery in the history of human civilization to the equivalent of a golden retriever?
Because the unlikely messenger is the entire point of the narrative structure.
How so?
By making a dog the catalyst, Simak is deliberately bypassing all that arrogance of human engineering. He completely undercuts the grand scientific drama we usually expect.
He's telling us this isn't that kind of story.
Exactly. He is signaling to the reader early on that this will not be a story about the triumph of human intellect or the conquest of physics. Instead, he elevates the small, warm intimacies of the human-animal relationship.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
The discovery of time travel here is framed almost as a casual message from the universe, and it's delivered by a pet who just, happened to find a weird hole in the fence.
It really sets an incredible baseline for the story. It makes you feel safe, almost.
Exactly. It establishes the pastoral ideal structurally, not just aesthetically.
Structural peace.
Yeah. Simak is painstakingly setting up the slow rhythm of rural life as a necessary contrast. You as the reader have to deeply feel the quiet of that farm.
You have to settle into the porch swing.
Right. You have to feel that innocent, simple joy of a dog playing in the woods. You have to internalize that peace because it serves as the emotional collateral for the absolute chaos that is going to follow.
Because the modern world is eventually going to catch wind of what Asa has found.
And when they do, it's not going to be pretty.
No, it's not.
Oh.
But before the world finds out, Asa obviously has to investigate. I mean, a fresh dinosaur bone is not something a paleontologist can just put on a shelf and ignore.
He'd be a pretty bad scientist if he did.
Right. So he follows Bowser's trail deep into this very remote, rocky outcropping on his property. And this is where he encounters something genuinely, wonderfully alien.
The source of the bone.
Yeah. He meets a being that he eventually just names Catface.
Such a folksy Wisconsin name for an alien.
It really is. Now, this alien has been stranded on Earth for 50,000 years. He lives completely off the grid in these rocks. And Catface possesses this natural biological ability.
Which is how Bowser got to the past.
Exactly. Catface can create what they call time roads. These are literal pathways or portals that lead back to various epochs in history, most notably the Pleistocene.
Which is the era with the mastodons.
Right, which Asa dubs Macedonia, mostly just to give his brain a label to cope with the sheer, overwhelming reality of physically stepping into the Ice Age.
We really need to look closely at how CMAC designs Catface, though, because it completely subverts all the alien encounter tropes of the 1950s and 1970s.
Yeah, he's not what you'd expect at all.
Not at all. When you look back at that era of science fiction, aliens are almost always anthropomorphic invaders.
Right, little green men.
Little green men, bipedal conquerors in shiny silver suits, or, monstrous predators with acid for blood.
But Catface is none of those things.
He is described in these very abstract, visionary terms. He is geometrically and conceptually other. He completely avoids human projection.
But, I am still stuck on the mechanics of these time roads, though, because in almost all science fiction, time travel requires a machine.
A very loud machine.
Yeah, a DeLorean, a TARDIS, some massive chronosphere. It requires a massive input of energy, plutonium, whatever. But the text makes it explicitly clear that Catface isn't out there building machines in the woods.
No soldering irons or motherboards.
Right. He isn't plugging anything in, so how does it actually work?
Well, because the timers are a biological or consciousness-based mechanism, not an engineered one.
A consciousness-based mechanism.
Yeah, in CMAX lore, time isn't a physical highway you drive a machine down. It is a frequency. It's a dimensional resonance.
Okay, so it's more like tuning a radio.
That's a great analogy. Catface doesn't build a door. His consciousness naturally tunes to the frequency of the past, effectively aligning the fabric of space-time around him. It is a personal, almost magical gift.
And it's completely intrinsic to his biology as a higher-order being.
Exactly.
It's just astonishing to think about the vulnerability of this creature.
It's very poignant.
It is. When we think about standard alien invasion tropes, the alien usually arrives with overwhelming force. Massive motherships just blotting out the sun, blowing up the White House.
Total domination.
But here you have an entity holding the ultimate power of the universe, the literal ability to manipulate this space-time continuum at will. And he's just this lonely, stranded being hiding out in a rock formation in rural Wisconsin.
The isolation of Catface is profound. You have to remember, he is functionally immortal, and he has been completely alone for 50 millennia.
50,000 years.
To put that in perspective, he has been sitting in those rocks since before human beings even developed complex agriculture.
Just waiting.
Just waiting. His existence serves as a deep philosophical metaphor. He exists in what the literary critiques call a typical Samakian wilderness.
Okay, I like that term.
The alien's profound loneliness mirrors the human condition itself. Think about it. We look up at the stars and wonder if anyone else is out there craving connection.
Are we alone in the universe?
Right. And Catface has been looking out at the Earth, trapped, craving the exact same thing from us.
So we have this beautifully quiet setup. A man, his dog, and an immortal, lonely alien forging this quiet connection on a farm, opening magical doors to the untouched past.
It sounds like a fairy tale.
It really does. But Asa isn't a monk, and this isn't a fairy tale. He is a 20th century American man. And the moment profound wonder meets modern reality, the wonder has to adapt.
And that's where the satire kicks in.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
The narrative takes what I can only describe as a hilarious but deeply tragic pivot. Asa teams up with a woman named Rila, and she possesses a much more pragmatic, business-oriented mind.
She's the pragmatist.
Very much so. They look at these time portals, they look at the majestic, completely untouched ecosystem of the Pleistocene, and they decide the most logical next step is to monetize it. They literally form a commercial enterprise. They start selling exclusive, high-end vacation packages to wealthy, big game hunters who want to go back in time and shoot a dinosaur.
And this is where CMAC's gentle satire of human nature really shows its teeth.
It's so abrupt.
The pivot is incredibly abrupt, but it feels completely inevitable. You have the literal miracle of time travel, this profound, almost spiritual connection to an alien being and the living past.
And within pages, it's just a business model.
It is instantly subsumed by capitalism. Dinosaurs, these majestic, terrifying creatures of a bygone era, are immediately reduced to just another commodity to be consumed by the wealthy.
It is the concept of temporal colonialism. They don't just want to visit the past, they want to incorporate it, exploit its resources, and package it for consumers.
It's human nature at its most basic.
It's like finding a pristine, untouched alien planet, a veritable Garden of Eden, and your very first thought is, okay, where do I put the gift shop, how much should we charge for parking, and how do I write off the travel expenses on my taxes?
If we connect this to the bigger picture of CMAC's writing, he was deeply fascinated by humanity's compulsion to take the wondrous and make it transactional. You see it in earlier works like his short story Gleaners.
Right.
But the absolute genius of Macedonia is how it explores the legal and bureaucratic mechanics of that transaction.
The paperwork of time travel.
Yes. Asa and Rila realize very quickly that if they operate a multi-million-dollar time travel hunting business inside the state of Wisconsin, the United States government is going to tax them into oblivion.
They're going to regulate them to death.
Regulate them, and eventually the government will just seize the portals entirely under some national security pretext.
So they decide to orchestrate the ultimate offshore shell company.
Precisely. They establish the corporation Macedonia as a foreign entity. But instead of registering it in the Cayman Islands or Switzerland, they establish its corporate headquarters in the Pleistocene epoch.
I love this part so much.
They legally claim sovereign territory in the Ice Ages.
I honestly found myself laughing out loud reading the bureaucratic acrobatics they attempt here, because the Internal Revenue Service actually gets involved.
The IRS always gets its cut.
They do. Just think about the sheer, unadulterated absurdity of an IRS auditor trying to sit down and calculate the tax liability of operations occurring 50,000 years before the invention of currency.
It is hilarious, but it is also a highly sophisticated, biting critique of modern bureaucracy and the quest for national jurisdiction.
It's a great thought experiment.
CMAC had been obsessing over this legal loophole since his original 1955 short story. He is asking a ridiculous but legally consistent question.
Which is?
If you travel back in time, do the laws of the United States still apply to you? Does the U.S. Constitution cover the Jurassic period?
It's a fair question for a lawyer to ask.
By declaring Macedonia a sovereign nation across the fourth dimension, CMAC highlights the arbitrary, constructed nature of our modern institutional structures.
Asa and Rila are dealing with literal, immortal extraterrestrials and living, breathing mastodons.
And their absolute primary concern, the thing that is actually keeping them up at night, is surviving a tax audit.
It perfectly illustrates how bureaucratic rot can and will infect absolutely any new frontier we discover.
No matter how magical it is.
Right. Now, I have to admit, as I was reading the middle section of the book, I found myself getting a bit overwhelmed by the sheer scale of the conflict.
It escalates very quickly.
Because it doesn't just stay a local Wisconsin tax dodge. The secret inevitably gets out to the public. And suddenly, it's not just Asa dealing with one confused auditor. It becomes a massive, society-wide crisis.
Everyone wants a piece of the pie.
Every major faction of society descends on this little farm, trying to vie for control of the time roads. It turns into an absolute feeding frenzy.
Yes, the narrative broadens significantly right here. The time portals act as an ideological Rorschach test for modern society.
A Rorschach test, I like that.
Every institution looks at the past, and they only see a solution to their own specific modern problems.
Right. And you have these very distinct factions that show up. First, you have the Wall Street speculators and the massive corporate conglomerates.
The capitalists.
Exactly. They see the past as just an infinite strip mine. They want to extract the gold, the timber, the completely untapped oil reserves. They have zero reverence for the majesty of the Pleistocene. It is purely a ledger of unexploited natural resources to them.
And then, on the other end of the spectrum, you have the religious coalitions.
This was fascinating.
The ideological response to time travel is arguably one of the most fascinating aspects of the book's world building. These religious coalitions pool their resources and offer the Macedonia Corporation astronomical sums of money to permanently seal off and quarantine specific eras of history.
Specifically the years of Jesus Christ's life.
Yes, they want to completely block travel to the 1st century.
Which initially sounds extreme, almost like censorship. But when you dig into the internal logic of the novel, it makes a kind of terrifying sense.
It does. Within the context of the novel's philosophical debates, these religious institutions realize that a time machine is the greatest threat ever posed to the concept of faith.
Because faith requires the unknown.
Exactly. Faith, by definition, requires belief without empirical proof. If you can simply buy a ticket to the first century and physically film biblical events, or worse, discover that historical events differ from the theological narrative, the foundational mystery of religion just collapses.
So they aren't necessarily being malicious.
No, they aren't trying to control the past out of pure malice. They are logically compelled to quarantine the timeline to preserve the very mechanism of spiritual belief.
Which is such a brilliant, impartial way for CIMAC to handle that theological debate. And then there is the federal government, whose agenda might be the most cynical and arguably the most uniquely 1970s reaction of all.
The government's plan is incredibly dark.
It really is. The U.S. government looks at the time portals, and they don't see scientific wonder. They don't even see natural resources. They see a giant rug to sweep their domestic problems under.
Out of sight, out of mind.
They formulate a plan to essentially deport the disadvantaged, the poor, the unemployed, the so-called social burdens straight into the past.
To understand the government's motivation in the text, you really have to remember the era CIMAC is writing in.
Late 70s.
Right. The late 1970s was a period of severe economic stagflation in the United States. You had energy crises, massive shifts in the industrial base, and a growing panic about the sustainability of the welfare state.
People were very worried about the economy collapsing.
Exactly. The novel takes that real-world anxiety and just pushes it to a utilitarian extreme. The government in the story calculates that it is simply cheaper to exile the surplus population into a prehistoric wilderness than it is to fix the structural economic failures of the present.
It's chilling. But, you know, as I was reading all of this, I was waiting for a Lex Luthor figure to emerge.
A main villain.
Yeah. I kept waiting for a primary antagonist, a singular dark lord who was secretly manipulating the church, the state, and Wall Street. But it never happened.
No, there's no mastermind.
The conflict almost feels unfocused at times, because there is no central villain to punch in the face at the end. So what does this all mean? Am I missing the point of the conflict here?
You're not missing it. You are actually hitting on the central thesis of the novel. The fact that there is no singular villain is exactly CIMAC's point.
So the lack of a villain is the feature, not a bug.
Exactly. The narrative suggests that a singular villain is just a comforting fiction we tell ourselves. The big game hunters, shooting mastodons, the government trying to hide its structural failures, the religious institutions trying to control the epistemological narrative, and the corporations strip mining untouched continents. None of them are inherently evil masterminds.
They're just doing their jobs.
They are all just institutions acting in their own rational self-interest. They are symptoms of the exact same underlying disease.
It's the tragedy of the commons, but applied to the fabric of space-time.
That is a perfect way to phrase it. The antagonist isn't a monster. The antagonist is humanity's fundamental inability to let a good thing simply exist without imposing jurisdiction, monetization, or utility upon it.
It's a deeply pessimistic turn. I mean, the book starts with this wondrous, almost childlike discovery of a dinosaur bone, and it devolves into a full-blown sociological cautionary tale.
It gets very dark.
And the natural consequence of this societal feeding frenzy is the complete and utter destruction of the pastoral ideal that Asa originally tried to protect.
The quiet farm is gone.
The quiet, idyllic Macedonia that Asa dreamed of is just overwhelmed. It's polluted by the noise, the bureaucracy, the literal infrastructure of human greed.
And we really see the toll this takes on Catface.
Poor Catface.
He's the alien who made everything possible. He freely shared this miraculous biological gift with Asa, but Catface operates on a frequency of pure connection and existence.
He doesn't understand capitalism.
He doesn't. The relentless greed, the legal battles, the transactional nature of humanity, it creates a kind of psychic static for him. He is alienated by all the noise.
He just wants a friend.
Right. He grows distant, and eventually the tragedy culminates when Catface leaves Earth entirely.
The magic literally packs up its bags and leaves the building. It's devastating. And, you know, I want you, the person listening to this right now, to just think about your own life for a second.
We've all experienced this on some level.
Think about a time when you found a pure, simple joy. Maybe it was a quiet hobby, a secret fishing spot, or even a small, tight-knit online community.
Some place that was just yours.
Yeah. And then think about what happened when that thing was discovered by the masses, when it was scaled up, monetized, and subjected to the complications of modern adult life. Suddenly, the magic is just completely sucked out of it, replaced by algorithms and admission fees.
That deeply relatable human experience is precisely the macro conflict CIMAC is exploring here. It's the fragile pastoral ideal, versus the corrosive, corrupting forces of the modern world.
Catface leaving is the ultimate symbol of that.
Catface's departure represents the definitive loss of wonder. CMAC is posing a remarkably cynical view for a science fiction author, that modern capitalism and bureaucratic structures act as a fundamental rot on the human spirit.
It's a harsh indictment.
It is. The inescapable implication is that humanity, as currently structured, is just fundamentally not mature enough for advanced power. If you hand us the universe, we will simply ruin it with paperwork and extraction.
It leaves the narrative in a place that feels like the dream is entirely dead. The immortal friend has gone to the stars, the corporations have essentially ruined the timeline, and Asa is left just standing in the ruins of his own ambition.
It's a very low point for the characters.
Very low. But right when the plot feels completely hopeless, there is a massive twist regarding the actual mechanics of the time roads. And honestly, it completely changes the entire thematic weight of the novel.
Yes, the narrative takes a very unexpected turn regarding how temporal physics actually function in this universe.
Asa discovers a secret.
Asa discovers that he can now open the time roads himself.
Right. And we need to be very clear about how this happens. Because Asa does not capture Catface and reverse engineer his alien biology in a sterile laboratory.
She doesn't steal the power.
He doesn't build a machine out of palladium and copper wire. He can open the portals because of his long-term, sympathetic, and highly personal connection to Catface.
We really have to analyze the mechanism here. As we discussed earlier, Catface manipulates space-time not through engineering, but through a conscious frequency.
Radio tuning.
Exactly. The novel establishes that Asa's sustained empathy, his years of quiet, genuine connection with this alien, literally rewired his own consciousness.
It changed his brain.
His brain, through sheer emotional resonance, learned to tune into the exact same dimensional frequency that Catface used.
Which is such a beautiful concept.
Yeah.
But it is also highly controversial among readers. I know the literary critiques absolutely tear into this ending.
They really do. It's a major point of contention.
Many reviewers call it a textbook Deus Ex Machina. They feel it is structurally weak, a completely unearned cheat, where Asa just magically inherits godlike powers right at the 11th hour, right when the plot has backed itself into a corner.
Honestly, from a purely structural standpoint, the critics have a valid argument.
You think it's a cheat?
It is a bit of a cheat, mechanically speaking.
Yeah.
It violates the standard rules of sci-fi plotting, where a protagonist must actively overcome the antagonist through superior intellect or action. Asa essentially just gets handed the magical solution because he was a good guy.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though, because I am going to push back on that criticism entirely.
Oh, really? Okay, let's hear it.
Mechanically, sure, maybe it's abrupt,
Right.
maybe it violates plotting rules 101, but thematically, it is absolutely 100% perfect.
Because of the satire.
Exactly. Think about what this book is satirizing.
Yeah.
The entire novel has been demonstrating how corporate scheming, aggressive taxation, and intellectual exploitation ruin absolutely everything they touch.
Right.
If Asa defeated the corporations by out-scheming them, or if he saved the day by building a better, faster, more expensive time machine, it would actually validate their worldview.
Ah, I see what you're saying.
It would prove that technological dominance and clever maneuvering are the ultimate powers in the universe. By having the solution be a natural, biological byproduct of pure, unadulterated compassion, Simak completely undercuts the antagonist's entire philosophy.
That's a really strong point.
He is arguing that the ultimate key to human evolution isn't a bigger engine, it is empathy.
This raises an important question, and it's one the critical essays actually highlight as central to Simak's enduring legacy. Does the science fiction genre rely too much on technological or violent solutions?
We definitely expect the hero to shoot their way out.
As readers, we are so deeply conditioned to expect the hero to hack the mainframe, reverse the polarity of the neutron flow, or just blow up the mothership.
Violence or math?
Exactly. But Simak strips all of that away. He is suggesting that emotional and empathetic solutions are not only more realistic to the human experience, but they are indicative of a higher evolutionary state.
Empathy is the ultimate superpower.
The true superscience in Macedonia isn't temporal physics at all. It's the radical ability to connect with the other without trying to exploit them. Empathy is the ultimate technology.
Exactly. So taking all of this into account, the brilliant premise, the sharp satire, the deeply controversial ending, Let's kind of zoom out and evaluate the novel as a whole,
Look at the big picture.
because it occupies a very strange space in the sci-fi canon.
Yeah.
When you read the critical consensus, reviewers often note this stark duality in the text.
Duality in what sense?
Well, they say the novel reads with the breezy simplicity of a YA book. It's very accessible, very plain-spoken, but it contains this incredibly dark, quite cynical core about human nature.
It is absolutely a novel of duality, and we have to be honest about its flaws as well as its triumphs.
Let's talk about the flaws first.
If we look at the weaknesses, the prose itself is frequently described by critics as wooden. The dialogue can be incredibly corny and, frankly, stilted at times.
It can be a little clunky.
CMAC's characters lack the deep internal psychological complexity that you might expect from modern literary fiction. They function more as archetypes or mouthpieces for the various philosophical factions.
They're vessels for the ideas.
Exactly. Furthermore, the plot itself is described as incredibly straightforward, lacking intricate subplots or sophisticated pacing.
I definitely felt that while reading it. The mechanics of the writing can sometimes feel like a very dry newspaper report of a miracle.
Which makes total sense, given Simak's decades-long background as a working journalist. He prioritized the clear delivery of information and ideas over florid emotional interiors.
He just wanted to get the facts down.
But if we flip the coin and look at its strengths, that exact same journalistic prose makes the book an absolute delight to read.
He goes down smooth.
It doesn't get bogged down in impenetrable jargon. Critics praise it as a perfect, gentle satire that nonetheless manages to evoke a profound sense of cosmic awe. And its vision of commercialized wonder is remarkably prescient.
That prescience is what stuck with me the most. I mean, think about how we view the final frontiers today.
Like space exploration.
Look at space travel.
Hmm?
We have billionaires treating low Earth orbit as a commercial playground, monetizing the stars before we've even fully explored them.
Selling tickets to space?
Simak saw that exact dynamic coming half a century ago. He knew that the moment we figured out how to reach the heavens, someone would immediately start selling naming rights to the craters.
How does a book with admittedly wooden dialogue and a straightforward plot achieve classic status? It achieves it because its thematic fusion is simply unparalleled.
No one else was doing this.
No one else in the history of the genre was taking the quiet, pastoral lifestyle of rural Wisconsin, mixing it with the mind-bending concepts of interdimensional alien biology, and using it to deliver a biting satire of IRS tax codes and bureaucratic overreach into a single, cohesive narrative.
It is the execution of those specific themes that elevates it from a pulp novel to literature, especially the major overarching theme that the literary analysts always pull out of this text.
The ending theme.
The melancholic idea that you can never go home.
Yes, that is vital to understanding the ending. When Asa ultimately gains the empathetic power to open the time roads himself, and he chooses to return to Macedonia, the critics are careful to point out that this is not a fairy tale ending.
It's not a happily ever after.
He is not returning to his innocent childhood. He isn't escaping to a perfect, untouched past. The reality he enters is hard-won and completely altered.
The innocence is permanently gone.
Completely. He has seen the naked greed of humanity. He has watched the government plot to deport the poor, and he's watched corporations literally try to pave the Ice Age.
He can't pretend he doesn't know what people are capable of.
Exactly. The past, in CMAC's philosophical view, is a place to understand our roots and confront our fundamental nature. It is not a fantasy world you can use to escape your responsibilities. You cannot unsee the corruption of the modern world once it has been revealed to you.
You can never go home because the you that left just doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
The experiences have fundamentally altered your consciousness. And the home you remember was always an illusion anyway, a fragile pastoral ideal just waiting to be shattered by reality.
It's a very mature perspective.
It is a beautiful, deeply melancholic realization that grounds this wild time travel premise in a very grounded emotional reality.
It forces the reader to sit with the consequences of knowledge rather than just enjoying the spectacle of the adventure.
This deep dive really takes you on a journey. I mean, we started with a golden retriever finding a chewed-up bone on a quiet farm, and we ended up witnessing the total bureaucratic, legal, and commercial collapse of a trans-dimensional monopoly.
It covers a lot of ground.
It really makes you look at your own life differently. I want you to think about your own pastoral ideals. What are those quiet, simple things you value? The places you go, the routines you have, the small communities you rely on to find peace.
The things that keep you grounded.
How easily could those sanctuaries be corrupted or destroyed if you aren't fiercely protecting them from the relentless demands, the speed, and the monetization of the modern world?
CMAC leaves us with a profound realization based on all of this chaos. Through the tragedy of Macedonia and the triumph of Ace's empathy, he shows us that true, enduring power doesn't come from exploiting a new discovery.
It doesn't come from the patent office.
No, it doesn't come from regulating it, patenting it, or finding a clever way to tax it. True power, the kind that actually elevates the human condition, comes from empathizing with the unknown.
Empathy is the key.
It leaves you with a deeply challenging question to mull over on your own. If humanity were handed the literal keys to the universe tomorrow, would we sit down and try to understand the nature of the door, or would we just instantly start charging admission?
And to think, it all started with Bowser the dog, dropping a dinosaur bone on a creaky wooden porch. Proof that sometimes the most universe-altering discoveries don't announce themselves with sirens and flashing lights. Sometimes they just quietly show up at your feet, wagging their tail, asking if you want to play.